Good Sunday afternoon, everybody. Meteorologist Casey Cloud here in the Weather Center right now, giving you an update on a severe thunderstorm warning in play for portions of southwestern Georgia. That's where the focus is right now. This is in play until 3:15 there for areas of Decatur, Miller, Grady, Mitchell, Baker, and Seminole counties. I know there's been some hail potential with this storm as it's been over more rural areas, and now it's headed right there toward the area there near the Bainbridge / Decatur County Industrial Airport. So could be a little bit of hail there. The hail signature has weakened a little. The warning is for half-dollar size hail, so up to 1.25 inches. That is the storyline. I know when we first had a warning issued earlier on this accident, it was for hail to 1 inch in diameter out there as we were looking, this was getting out of Alabama and into toward parts of Seminole County, and now 1.25 inches, though it is weakening some. I think the next update would probably bring that back down. They also have added the wind potential to 60 on this at first. Didn't have that. Do have that right now, so we'll be curious. Everybody in the meteorology community will be curious to see what the Bainbridge Airport meter reads here in terms of the wind speed. 18 was a speed here from about, I guess, an hour ago or so. But we'll probably get something higher now. We did get a gust to 42 there at the steam mill area there. In the steam mill area there at the Georgia Mesonet Station, that was about 2:20 this afternoon. So, giving you an indication maybe just some severe winds, but I wouldn't be surprised if we had a little bit of hail, just severe limits in there a little while ago, especially based on what we were seeing. But it's in more rural areas generally. It's now headed right toward the airport down here in just a matter of moments. Coming in on the airport, though, I think there is a little bit of weakening trend. We have to monitor things frame by frame. But you see how we had the orange showing up here for a good little bit. We posted that on Facebook, on Twitter/X. You see how that's weakened now at this point. But I'll show you what I'm talking about. You see there's not a lot in there in terms of geography. You see our risk area, but you see a little bit, maybe, some population here and there, but very rural overall. But now as we start to progress this on over and put the hail tracker information back on, you start to see things like the airport come into play, for instance. There's still, a lot of ruralness to it, but there are some homes up in here, to the north of the city center of Bainbridge, so that's what we want to be on with this. It's looking like, these storms, here have gotten, a little bit more organized than what some of the models were showing. We did say on late Thursday, though, in our update that they had added a margin of risk, SPC had, and there's a margin of risk for many of us here, so we have to just remain alert. This is your wind risk covering almost, not everybody in the region because Albany's not in it now, but you see Southwest Georgia all the way across. We do technically have a formal risk here of an isolated severe threat. It's a 1 out of 5 on the scale. There's not a tornado risk. As you see, no tornado risk, but your hail risk, your wind risk in pretty similar areas here. We have some pop-up stuff in Alachua. We have some stuff there in Jackson County that looks like, there's watching there on Mariana. We're watching some of the different signatures on that. Then southwest of Chipley, there we have a severe thunderstorm warning. Some of that stuff looks a bit weaker than what was shown earlier on in a way. But we have to just watch. It's not, it's not a 0 chance of a tornado here today. Probably won't happen, but it's a non-zero percentage there with that risk because there is some weak rotation in some of this accident as well. That's not our primary threat today. Again, primary threat would be hail to just over 1 inch, wind gusts to maybe just over 60 miles an hour. So that's kind of the storyline with what we're dealing with here in this pattern. As we give you guys the very latest, I'm just checking here some of the different, looks here at this. Again, it's a 1 out of 5, not enough for a watch or anything like that here. As we're monitoring things, as we're tracking things, not a severe thunderstorm watch or anything, but there's a freeze watch in play as we're looking ahead in toward the timeline here. Yes, we have a freeze watch here in play. As I'm going to go back to this broad view real quick. And I see that SPC just sent out an update, so you may see that risk area shift a little bit here. The update for 3 o'clock just came out here, so you'll see that here in a second. But there is a freeze watch here in play for portions of the area here. So that's something that I'm watching here for sure. into the weather center. That's going to be for Tuesday morning. So let me go ahead and just, make sure I clarify that. Not tonight, though. It's going to, start cooling down some tonight. Tomorrow night's when we're going to have our freeze here, potentially, for many of us. So you need to remain alert for that. We could see some freezing temperatures as low as 27 degrees in the coldest spots possible there, as we're getting there toward Tuesday morning. That goes all the way there into, parts of Duval County. I'm going to pull that up on a map for a second. I have to add that in here. I haven't, had to pull some of this up. We haven't had hardly any active weather in a while, so I got to switch something over to add here real quick. The freeze alerts onto one of my screens, because I think that'd be helpful for the viewers at home. Because, even though we have this, rogue axis with a severe convection, it's honestly showed some weakening trends. It was looking pretty robust there a little while ago in the more rural part of southwest Georgia. Now I do see an uptick on the hail signature. When you see that little triangle go from unfilled there to filled, that's an indication of strengthening. And if you get a number in it, that means it's saying there's probably severe potential with this. So it's starting to uptick a little in that latest scan there. So we'll have to watch that as it gets into Bainbridge. I'm not trying to downplay this, but, everybody's going to have the cold weather, whether it's freeze, frost, or just cold with a wind chill factor, but not everybody's going to get rain, much less severe weather here. So that's why we're really playing the freeze, condition up here. That's something we don't generally get to right there on, the 11th of November, Veterans Day, obviously, as we're looking at things and as we're tracking things. So just getting our freeze alerts loaded on into our system here, so I can send that to you live, because it just got put in here a little while ago. I know it's important, as we just got an update on the warning down to inside the hill 60-mile-an-hour wind gusts now. As we're looking and as we're tracking things, they have lowered it to just the, lowest level there, the, just a very marginally severe type of risk. So, that's kind of the storyline as we're looking at things and as we're tracking things here. We're just trying to keep you guys up to date on everything in toward the weather center. So, again, just trying to keep you guys informed here this afternoon for sure. There's also a fire risk tomorrow, a elevated fire risk. We're just getting the update from the Storm Prediction Center. They could cover that as well. That's in play for tomorrow. There's a fire weather watch, and let me try to put that on the screen here. But let me go ahead and show you here on our other screen real quick. This is your freeze watch, and there's a warning from like McIntosh Liberty out of our area up in Georgia. I know it's kind of, with the way I have this on here, you can't see everything perfectly, but I think this tells the story pretty good. This didn't quite go to the beaches here, into toward eastern Duval, St. Augustine, Palm Coast, but further west, we have that freeze watch for many of us, that first freeze now. It's a situation here where not everybody under the freeze watch may get put under the freeze warning, but this is for Tuesday morning. Excuse me, as we go ahead and continue to track this, continue to monitor this, we have a freeze watch for Tuesday morning here, which again, is not something you are maybe used to dealing with this early in the season. We're a little out of schedule for a lot of our counties, I know. If you're used to watching the weather over the decades in Jacksonville, one thing that comes to mind, and just looking through some of it here recently in the Weather Center, some videos and the like, and and just thinking about it here, is George Winterland bringing those plants in there when you have that freeze or that frost to Lake George Winterland, when you have those colder conditions coming on in here. It's time to protect those. And you don't want to leave that last plant outside. If you've seen the video over the years, I can't show it on the air, but if you've seen the video over the years, you know what I mean. You want to bring all those plants, in or protect them somehow. You don't actually have to bring them all in, especially if they're not potted. You can't, but you get the idea. If you've seen that, it's going back a good ways. But something I saw, growing up there, when I was younger. But as we're you do want to take appropriate action according to the Weather Service there to ensure tender vegetation and outdoor pets have adequate protection from the cold temperatures. Young children, the elderly, and the homeless are especially vulnerable to the cold, so take measures to protect them. That's what the Weather Service Jacksonville reiterating here. Make sure you protect those tender plants from the cold. This is going to be a cold snap, we're right now. Let me see if I can put our temperatures on here. Let me do that real quick as we try to load things on in. Yeah, there's your temperature. You see 80s on the board right now, folks. We're going to have some spots in the 20s at night, 29 maybe, by Tuesday morning here. So that's a huge, huge difference that you really need to take into account here. You need to really take seriously, as we're looking and as we're tracking things. That's a huge temperature drop. We're going to keep our eyes on that. We got quite a bit just, going on here with the weather pattern. This very, very vigorous front here. This very vigorous pattern. Let's get back to the warning here real quick. The Tallahassee radar looks to be the closest now. And we have some of this there right around the airport there in toward Bainbridge, just passing by it here in the most recent scans. So Tallahassee radar is now considered the closest here on this severe thunderstorm warning. This is what we're on the air here on this Sunday afternoon on this 9th of November 2025. So, it doesn't honestly look all that impressive right now. We also don't have too many blacks showing up here on the reflectivity. What that means, earlier you could see it there in Seminole County. That indicates here that the radar is, detecting in a lot of cases, and in this case, some hail potential that was really starting to get, a little bit, greater in the magnitude in terms of both the size and, not going from like an inch to an inch and a quarter, and also maybe, more of it coming down as well. Not just, sometimes you can have a bunch of hail even that is not, quite reaching severe limits, but it still can be impactful. That happens around here occasionally. So you have to be aware of that as we're looking at things that are around Bainbridge in Decatur County, Georgia. So speaking of Bainbridge, there are some traffic cameras, the Georgia 511 perspective. So let me go ahead and we'll pull up one right now. I know some of these, the worst is going just north of the city center, but we'll pull up the northernmost camera. Whoa. Oh my, wow, I'm surprised by that. If that's an accurate reading. Okay, so the sight there, this is much stronger than what the radar is indicating then. So I have a tendency to believe this is correct. We're now getting a report of a gust of 70 at the airport there, Bainbridge. So this is a much stronger storm than what radar's indicating, and a little bit stronger than even what the warning's indicating. So I'm surprised by that. I don't get surprised that often on these wind numbers here, to be quite honest, and that signature did not indicate that at all. It looked very marginal, and instead we're getting a gust report here 4 minutes ago. It just came in the system now. It'll change to 70 here soon. At 18 it'll change to 70. So this storm is producing winds to 70 here, folks. That is surprising, to be quite honest. So these storms, they're going to probably start issuing a whole bunch of warnings in based on, on just, and just keeping them, if nothing else, based on that report, considering, something like that, and making sure that they do verify that that is actually, what happened there at Bainbridge Airport, that we actually did get a gust of 70. That is, again, really surprising, to be quite honest there. But let's pull the traffic camera up just south, and it's not that, not even that interesting looking here right now. As we'll go ahead and switch on over here to that. Let me pull that in live. This is your Georgia 5-1 perspective there, the Bainbridge area. And this is, a camera right into town, just north where the airport is, and we had the gust of 70. You see the dark skies here telling this story as we look. But that's just, one perspective there as we're looking at things there in toward Decatur County. Again, that 18 will probably change here very soon. It came in the system. It'll come in ahead of time there. So, again, that's kind of a surprise, to be quite honest, based on what I'm seeing. I mean, maybe there is some strengthening going on in that latest game with some of that black showing up on reflectivity. So there is a little bit of strengthening, some hail maybe, and some wind damage potential then headed towards State Road 253. So, again, this 18 here, let me see if I can get it to update here automatically. Give me a second. I have to do some things. When I say automatic, I should say manually, because I'm going to try to get it to update for us instead of waiting for the interval here. So it'll change though for you guys. So it'll look like it's automatic as we're looking. There you go. So 70. That's what we got. They just sent it into the storm report. So they're now confirming, Weather Service believes that too. Like what it went right over them. So this is much stronger than what we were thinking it was here in terms of, myself. And then the warning, a little bit stronger than what the Weather Service thought. and they now have upgraded this warning to considerable damage because of that. They're saying this could cause considerable damage because of that. Confirmed. We literally had gusts. They're reported at the airport to 70, folks. This has happened. This 4-mile side hurricane strength with a gust there, the Category 1 hurricane strength. This is over a much more localized area. I mean, you saw Bainbridge into town. It didn't even look that bad. But right up north there, we had a gust to 70 at 255. Again, you don't get those on those sensors around here very much. So backing that up, maybe a downburst. Maybe a downburst because, with the way the greens and reds were there, I'm just not, that does not look, because if you just add these numbers up, you're seeing only winds of 20, maybe 30 miles an hour, and instead we did actually have 70. Let me check another angle on this. It's going to happen sometimes, though, but they're going to be a lot more careful probably now after getting a report like that, actually from an airport sensor, no less. I mean, this just didn't look like a whole bunch there. I thought it was getting pretty close to maybe, it was just barely hanging on to needing a warning, and now we actually have had a confirmed gust of 70. You don't get that even on a lot of our worst severe weather days here, like in the summer, for instance. I mean, sometimes in the fall, spring, especially spring, you can get this. But, I'm surprised by that, to be quite honest. Again, a gust of 70 has been confirmed at Bainbridge Airport here about 8 minutes ago. So you need to take this very seriously. I'm sure they're going to extend this warning then as we get here toward Ocklackney, Pelham to Thomasville, especially in the more broad zone in there, but maybe Pelham to Ocklackney, maybe Meigs there. That could be an area that really gets hit in southern Colquitt County down the road, maybe in the Cook County, Lowndes County, northern Lowndes, hey, Hyde, Dale, maybe, as you kind of just track it out here. I'm kind of giving you guys a heads up, maybe all the way to Homerville even, give or take. Pearson to Homerville later on in that corridor. We may get a warning on this storm too. If the other one's capable of producing 70, I mean, it's not out of the question, even if it doesn't look like it on radar. If that produced 70, this one could produce 60, I mean, down here. So you may start getting a slew of warnings after that report that came out there. Again, a gust of 70 has been confirmed based on the METAR. I mean, it's occasionally when they're wrong, but they went right over the airport. Even if it didn't, look like it was that strong in the wind mode, it had to have been. I mean, unless, something went way wrong with the sensor. I mean, they think it's valid. I think it's valid, and it winds gusts from the northwest there at 255. So again, it's a pretty big deal, to be quite honest, that you get a gust like that in this type of very marginal pattern. That's going to tell you that these storms are really producing. And we got to take these very seriously this afternoon then until, they start to show more decay and shine. Maybe it was falling apart some too. Maybe, that's why we had that gust of 70. It was just kind of letting that wind out, but it doesn't look like it's completely falling apart. Again, that means we got to, this helps us out, even though it probably has caused some issues here. It does help us out knowing that these storms have higher wind potential compared to what the radar is indicating here in terms of the wind mode. 270 customers in the dark in Decatur County. That's Bainbridge's county there, according to PowerEdit.us. Baker County, Georgia, 75 customers in the dark. We cover Baker, Georgia, and Baker, Florida, but Baker, Georgia here for perspective, is right up here is where it extends into, but you have to have it down into here as well as we're looking and as we're tracking things. Again, considerable damage is possible here based on that reporting. Confirmed gust to 70. Of course, we're always watching things for the 62 counties. A lot of us are staying dry right now as we're giving you guys the very latest here. On the situation, but you see some pop-up stuff in Alachua, Putnam. Nothing too impressive there. This is where we have the more robust acts, and, I just gotta wonder, especially if they don't issue any more warnings for the other areas here. They may think this was just a very quick burst of wind in a spot right over the sensor. I mean, that can happen, more so in summertime, but, that can happen here. I'm surprised that we got a gust of 70 like that confirmed on the sensor, that quickly. I mean, out of this action, especially when it was on the downtrend, it looked like. So again, we haven't had much severe weather lately, so, but to get something like that on a storm, that looks like it was just barely holding on to needing a warning, it's kind of surprising. So, again, you see some stuff on Orlando. It's strong maybe at points, but not officially severe down there. As we look, I know we got our warning information up for, in the corner for, the tips for up here, but even, you just hear rumbles of thunder in Central Florida, wherever, you need to go inside and be away from windows roadway, but, the wind damage potential, hail potential, that's why we have the warning in play. But remember, thunder roars anytime, whether it's a severe storm or just one rogue lightning strike, you need to be inside there. It's best to be away from windows as well. The sturdy building part, that's more so for when you have a severe warning, in play, when you have the wind and the hail potential. But, lightning can be problematic too. Haven't had much rain lately. We need rain badly. I don't want lightning around because that can cause issues. But if you don't get rain, we really need rain. Maybe this will overachieve some of these amounts. We badly need rain here in a lot of our counties, right where we're getting these storms even. There's not been much severe weather. There has not been much rain in a while. So we really need that precip there. As we look there at the wind mode again and rain mode, still we're, an inch at the most is what we've seen really in Seminole to Decatur counties. But, even that can help, but, better than nothing. But they don't want the severe weather to go along with it here. Let me go ahead and check some more information. I do want to pull up that fire weather watch again. We don't always get those around here, so I'm going to take off the freeze alerts in our system and then put up the fire alerts here as we look ahead, because all that wind, and depending on how much rain we get, that can, lead to more issues. That's for tomorrow, the fire weather watch. So, red flag warning is what that could lead to, which some folks will call it a fire weather warning, and I just put that on there kind of on the fly. So, trying to add some different things. I know that's one way. There you go. A better way of looking at that as we're looking here and as we're tracking. But that's for tomorrow, a fire weather watch in play here as we're giving you guys the latest. That does not include Jacksonville County to this point. But the fire weather watch here is going to be in play as I look at the particulars. A strong cold front moving through, critically low relative humidity coupled with strong winds and dry fuels from the ongoing drought expected to result in red flag conditions on Monday afternoon. So we're talking about minimum relative humidity values as low as 20% at points and gusts up to 30 miles an hour. So that's not really what you want to hear, obviously. So be very careful, tomorrow there. Gusty winds, low humidity, and dry, fuels there in terms of the overall pattern could get a red flag warning, across City and Perry and Madison and Monticello and Crawfordville, Tallahassee, Havana, Quincy. You kind of get the idea. Wilma there, Apalachicola. Just be aware, you can't be burning in these type of conditions. That can result in a very serious situation. When you have a red flag warning like that, that could come into place. A fire weather watch as of now, as we're looking and as we're tracking things. So that's the storyline in that grayish area there as you're looking there tomorrow. We just got a new warning, by the way, up to the north. So let me go ahead and kind of cover that here, because I saw another number come in. I want to double check that. Is that a different sensor there? I think it might be. Let me see if it's showing up on our other system. I know we have the new warning to 4, and you see that yellow box. Let me just... So it looks like... I'm just going to go through some of my sources here. Just trying to see that report. I know, well, at the airport, it sent out a gust here to 69 miles an hour, 3 minutes after that 65 report. It may be a different sensor in there, but nonetheless, it's just confirming we've had some nasty gusts there in that corridor around the Bainbridge airport there. And that's, justification for extending this warning now, whether it looks like a radar or not, and it looks like, well, maybe a little bit stronger there in some of these frames. They're going to extend this here. This warning now, northeastern Decatur, northern Grady, as well as southeastern Mitchell and northwestern Thomas counties until 4 o'clock. At 3:08 there, a severe thunderstorm was located 10 miles northwest of Wiggum, or 10 miles northeast of Bainbridge, moving east about 35 miles an hour, 60-mile-an-hour wind gust and quarter-size hail possible there. Cairo, Pelham, Lockney, Wiggum, Acreage there, Greedy County Airport, overward the community there of Quality. So that's kind of the storyline there. Again, a new severe thunderstorm warning at 4 o'clock. As we're looking, let's check where some of the strongest wind could go. Again, this pretty rural corridor here, so you're talking about maybe crossing State Road in Georgia 112, Georgia 93, Georgia 111, Georgia 3, US 19 ultimately. So kind of giving you guys an idea here. You know, I know those roads extend further up in north and south and but still, you know, just giving you an idea of the corridor this might go. And you see a new advisory to the south because trying to, you know, watch these gusts just under severe is what they're going with right now, and hail just under severe. So 60 and inch are criteria for a warning. That's what we have for portions of Decatur, Grady, Mitchell, and Thomas counties there in Georgia, not including Thomasville at this point, but we do have gusts of 50.5-inch hail there as we're looking there in toward the Florida Big Bend region now. It's starting to come in. So just under severe limits there as we're looking and as we're tracking things, as we give you guys the very latest on what's going on here this afternoon. So again, just trying to keep you guys up to date here on the storyline. I know we're trying to just be mindful here of the situation, you know, weather-wise here, as we continue to give you guys the, you know, information you need. I know some areas in the 80s right now, near record highs to near record lows. That's where we're going from today. Tomorrow's going to be cool in the day too, but it's going to be very chilly, very, you know, cold, freeze type cold tomorrow night. I see Nicole watching there on YouTube. Thanks so much for watching there, Nicole. And everybody, you know, just to kind of monitor the situation here this afternoon. I just thanks so much for tuning in and trusting me here. As we're, you know, on a Sunday, you know, a lot of our areas staying pretty dry right now. So, you know, it's not something that's urgent in a lot of our area, but a little bit of our area here, you know, it is an urgent situation here. We got to get this warning out. We've had it confirmed. Gust to 70 miles an hour there at the airport. There's a gust to 69 that showed up on a rod station there. So I'm pretty sure that's a different sensor right in the airport area. So, I mean, that tells you we had damage in the destructive, which that used to be the criteria for 70, but at least considerable damage type wind approaching that there at the airport at threat levels. So that's, you know, important in terms of the weather risk there, you know, concerning. But you see these hot temperatures. I mean, some areas there, do we have an 85 on here? I know it's sometimes hard to see if we have 84. I do see that. You know, I mean, go to Central Florida, you do, but in our area, I'm looking and, you know, we're close there. That's very warm, you know, right there near record highs. As we're looking and as we're tracking things, you see the marginal risk there. This is the model guidance from earlier. You know, some of this pretty well. And you're doing it a little bit, though, especially further west. And then you see the progression here and some convection maybe forming in South Central, the Southeast Georgia. I mean, there's a chance we don't get any rain around Stark and Jacksonville here. We shall see. That's what some of the models are showing, but there's a risk of severe weather. It's really hit and miss here in some of our area. We need the rain. We don't need the severe weather. As we're looking and as we're tracking, we might not end up getting either, you know, in a lot of our areas here. We really, really do need the rain because of our drought conditions here that we've been alluding to here lately. So we have to just be aware of that, obviously. So, and again, we're watching that progression of the timeline there. Let me go ahead and see what else I can pull up here. Bear with me. I know we're going through a lot of our different modes here in the Weather Center. Let me go ahead and I need to check here. I want to check a couple of things in one of the models for tonight. I mean, it's not going to be freeze tonight, but we're going to be cooler tonight. So like around dark, I know, you know, we had our forecast here the other night, and I was talking about Some of these temperatures going down. Yeah, 46 tonight for the low around Stark, and the weather strip is now going 28 around Stark. I haven't updated some of our numbers. I'll see what I had the night. They actually have 28 for Stark now, so that's, before we have the wind chill. That is chilly, very chilly there. As we're looking at, as we're tracking things here, as we give you guys the latest. I know I'm going to zoom out too to see the winter weather to the north. Let me go ahead and see that. I know we're not going to be, expecting anything like what I'm going to see on our other source here. Like this. We're not expecting that here, coming up. But to the north, I mean, some areas, even in Tennessee and North Georgia, for that matter, could be seeing some of that, or even more than that, as we're looking ahead over the timelines. Let me go ahead. Let me switch some of our modes up real quick. You see some of this wintry weather. Look at that all up in Indiana, western Indiana, no South Bend. They've been, they were getting it some last night, but it's gotten, more and more there in terms of, the conditions there, to allow for some of this to be in play here and, more favorable here. And you just see all that wintry weather. Some of that's, not, you see that some of these temperatures are just above freezing, so it makes it harder to stick. But still, wintry weather is the storyline as we look further on up in toward the country here, as we're looking at things and as we're tracking things here, as we give you guys the very latest here in this overall pattern. And in fact, let me go ahead and so I'll take that, radar view off in a second. You see some of this, showing up here, it's pretty light generally, but I mean, you never know. Some of these METARs here, well, South Bend is just showing snow, not just light snow. So that just could be an anomaly with the sensor, the way they report. I'm not sure, but let me go ahead and pull in. I need to see some light in North Carolina there. Just gotta make sure, you always worry about lightning when if you don't have a lot of precip and the like. But let me go ahead and pull up modeling. This is your snow forecast per se with the white and grayish areas there. You see. So we're talking about 8 p.m. tonight Eastern time. You see some of that in Eastern Tennessee there. And you see some of that even in Northern Alabama. And then the overnight there, you see some of that even, just kind of hanging around there. And then in the morning, maybe, more and more. I mean, this is tomorrow morning. Snow there. That's quite a bit there coming in on that, in the high-res modeling. I'm just a little surprised. These update every hour. So we have to, but you see some of that even all the way through Atlanta now. Maybe some flurries. Again, this is something that, updates on us. I mean, not a lot maybe, but that's tomorrow night. Maybe some flurries around Atlanta then, as we're looking, as we're tracking things, and it kind of fades it away. So, up in Raleigh though, some, it may not be that heavy, but there's not a lot of alerts out for this. But because you're not generally, I mean, flurries for a lot of the country is not a big deal here in terms of any hazards. Even here, it's just a busy day in the winter pattern with everybody else getting so much, but. Again, I just continuing to give you guys the very latest here on what's going on with the overall weather pattern. I know we're just trying to switch through all the different sources here. Let me go ahead. We have our different sensors on, and let me switch this on over here in just 1 second. Again, there's your temperatures, and you see how warm it is. I was telling a story. We have our severe warning still until 4 for portions there of Decatur, Grady, Mitchell, and Thomas counties there in Georgia. So again, have to be mindful of that as we're giving you the latest on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch here. It's all about protecting you, your friends, and your family. I know some interesting signatures here. Definitely some hail signatures right around State Road, Georgia 179 there. So we're looking in northwestern Grady County. So some hail. I'm sure it's falling, whether it's severe, can't really guarantee it from this, but definitely some hail would seemingly be falling there north of Wiggum. Again, along Georgia there, 179. So, again, we're keeping you updated on all of that. I know, let me go ahead and see what else I can pull up in the other source. I know, things like the Jaguar games going on this afternoon, but, maybe you're watching this and you're watching, that at the same time. And that game there, one where Jags have a pretty, good lead there, but still a lot of time remaining in that out there in Houston. By the way, thunderstorm wind damage reported in Jackson County in Florida there. As we're looking and as we're tracking things, that was around the Greenwood area, tree down and along Highway 71 there a little while ago. So that's kind of an important storyline to be mindful of here as we give you guys the very latest. I'm just trying to be, cognizant of the overall scenario here. We try to keep you guys up to date. We try to inform you guys on what's going on here as the situation does develop. Okay, so I want to say, I haven't updated some of this stuff, so bear with me here because this is from Thursday night, but I hadn't really changed that much. So I'll go ahead and throw it up here. These numbers, a degree or two. If I, redid this for this, and they've changed maybe a degree or two one way or the other. But this tells a story for Tuesday about it being cold and windy for that Veterans Day here. Like, there's different events like historic and the like here. Jacket weather on Tuesday, cold and windy. Be prepared here. It is going to be a chilly one. Going to have, this alert. Maybe, honestly, probably, if I redid this, weather stuff is going a few degrees cooler. So I probably have like 29 or 30 there at 7 a.m. even. So I have to let me check the wind factor to see what the models are showing for that. Again, this is from, back when I updated this late Thursday. So this has changed a little, but we're all live here on the fly. It hadn't changed enough for me to, when we're on the fly. I think it still, tells the story pretty well, but just keep in mind that maybe, a couple degrees cooler even here as, the pattern becomes a little bit more, entrenched here. We already knew it was kind of coming, but, looking at some of these numbers here, the wind chill numbers, I know just going off the raw numbers from the star, data there from the weather service in Jax. Let me take it right to start, because if you get outside of there, I'm just going, because I haven't looked through everything. I don't go directly, I use them, of course, for these hour by hour, and consider them in my forecast here, and, because hour by hour, that's not something, that's that easy, but I look at the models too. But just going off those only right now, since we're live on the air, Weather Service Jax Fort Stark itself here, they now are going at 7 a.m. at temperature 29 for that Tuesday morning with a wind chill of 21. So, yeah, they, it's dropped a few degrees here, and then 38 by 9 a.m. with a wind chill of 31. So, 10:30 they don't have that, but let's just say splitting the difference about 45 with a wind chill around 39. So yeah, see these numbers and think a few degrees cooler even now. Granted, I'd have to look at the models. I might not go quite that cool if I see something, but the wind, it might not be quite as strong right at sunrise as what we saw, but the wind chill factor is still going to be there. Got still close to 20, 15, 20 miles an hour at 10, 11 a.m. That's going to be not fun there, but even a little worse than that graphic, if you can believe it, probably for those temperatures. Some areas, that are a little bit more, that's just talking about Stark, and I, mainly factoring that in for this, but some other spots would be more closer to that, what I was saying with the numbers that are a few degrees warmer. But yeah, it's, something to keep in mind here as we look ahead. Gotta be careful there with all that. Obviously, as we're giving you the latest, I know another thing to be careful with here. We need the rain. We really do need it. We don't want severe weather, but we don't want drought to get worse. Like what we have, that latest drought monitor, an extreme drought here as we're looking Tallahassee, in the ward Jefferson County, Madison County, Hamilton County there, as we're looking at things and as we're tracking things. So that's kind of storyline there. Not where you want to see an extreme drought. You see a moderate drought for like Stark and Gainesville. Jacksonville is abnormally dry to moderate drought, but you see a very significant drought there. Tallahassee, Jefferson County, Madison County, Hamilton counties there. And we've been watching these storms in Georgia. You see up there, we're watching Georgia. Well, in Georgia, we have even, in some ways a worse situation as we look at things and as we track things here. It seems like that coverage of that, significant drought here definitely, is a concern as we give you guys the latest. I know I need to make those, covered by that logo, but I'll take it off real quick there, and you can see that extreme drought there, including Bainbridge there, including areas there, Cairo and Thomasville, and areas we've been talking about with a severe warning here this afternoon. So again, warnings, multiple warnings here this afternoon. We've had gusts, strong there. We don't want, in theory, I mean, it wouldn't necessarily be at the exact same time. You don't want lightning, and hit, start a fire, strong gust, and not much rain, because that's a bad combination there. Even just the lightning, things could smolder, and that's an issue if you're not getting enough rain to put it out. So that's something you got to be mindful of here. I know it's kind of odd to be talking about that when we're getting thunderstorm action with the rain, but yeah, got to be mindful of the drought monitor here this afternoon for sure, as we're looking and as we're tracking things in toward the weather center. So we're continuing to look at all the different maps here. We're watching this storm up north there. Veterans Day a couple days away on the 11th. We're on the 9th here of the month. Happy Veterans Day out there to everybody as we look ahead and toward the timeline. As we, honor those who served here coming up on that Tuesday. And right now we're here live just trying to get to the severe weather here. They're talking about all that. I know I've been talking a good while. We haven't had much of this here lately, to have to be on for like this. So it's been months really since we've had much of this. So we have to just be mindful. It's just a 1 out of 5, but you always have to risk level. We still have to just be watchful. You just have to be paying attention, vigilant here in these type of situations. Again, we're mindful of them. I know once you lose the instability later, that'll, to some degree knock off some of these storms here in terms of their strength. But, we're just going to continue to track things here in toward the weather center as we give you guys the latest. We're just trying to keep you informed, obviously, on what's going on. Here, and just be keeping you guys up to date here. And I know one thing we'll talk about here, and covers time to time. We'll talk about like college football playoff stuff. I actually have that updated because I do that in between here after the games. So see, based on the results, what happened, not just waiting a few days. So we'll see some of that here in a moment. We just got an update on this warning here. Let me go ahead and go over that. That's the most pertinent thing, obviously. Severe thunderstorm warning remains in effect until 4 p.m. This is while we're on the air. 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for northeastern Decatur, northern Grady, southeastern Mitchell, and northwestern Thomas counties. At 3:27, a severe thunderstorm was located 9 miles north of Cairo, moving east at 35 miles an hour. 60-mile-an-hour wind gust and half dollar size hail. Cairo, Pelham, so they've upped the hail level a little bit here. They've increased that against us. Some strength, and you see some of that with the purples, and even a little bit, if you look real close, a little bit of area black, which indicates some very, very nasty echoes in the Doppler, Doppler's detecting those nasty echoes there with the Doppler algorithms. Cairo, Pelham, Ocklackney, Wiggum, Acres there, Grady County Airport there, as well as Spence and the community of Quality. So yeah, we're talking about hail maybe over an inch in diameter here, in towards South Georgia, about to cross over State Road 93, State Road 111. This storm here, the speed on it is moving east at 35 miles an hour, so going generally 35 miles, traveling geography-wise in 1 hour, but the winds hazard 60-mile-an-hour wind gust and half dollar size hail. So, gotta be very mindful of that here Probably going to cross between Meigs and Ocklackney. Then we'll probably get another warning the way this is going right now. Over toward Coolidge, and you see the Moultrie Airport there, give or take. Berlin and Adel Hira there, Lakeland maybe in Georgia, going across. We'll see how long it holds together, but you know, if you just kind of draw the line here, you know, Home Road away cross later, all the way to Brantley, all the way to Brunswick. I don't think it'll hold together all the way with the warnings. You know, eventually it'll probably show signs of decay here, and we're not going to stay with it the whole time unless there's like a tornado warning, because, you know, that'd be hours and hours for this storm here. But I've been with you a while, giving you that heads up here on what could happen. So let me go ahead and switch modes here. You know, as we're looking, we're now seeing over an inch on this algorithm. Northwest of Cairo, northwest of Thomasville. You know, as we're looking at things, as we're tracking things here, it's moving east at 35 miles an hour. So, you know, you take it across Georgia, that's about, let's do the math, and that's about 4 hours. Maybe a little bit more, you know, we'll be watching it across over Georgia, south central and southeast Georgia now. You know, we have that wind risk here in play in that green today. We have a hail risk. We have, you know, it's just a marginal. It's just 1 out of 5. And sometimes these haven't been verifying here much lately. But today looks like it's going to be different. You know, it already has been with some of these wind reports. Energy values and some of these orange zones over 2,000 joules per kilogram. Your super, you know, based instability was that. And this is your supercell composite. It doesn't always have to exist perfectly in a pattern like this with some of the other forcing that is in play here. As we're looking and as we're tracking, you see that wind trying to switch around on us. That's cold northwesternly, you know, northwestern and northwesterly winds here coming in. You see how cold it is in northern Alabama right now. It's 48, 49 around Huntsville there. 48 in Florence, Alabama. You see the 40s there around Nashville. Right now, just, you know, maybe some little bit of rain popping in there, but you see how cold it is up there, and that's a sign, and not quite that cold during the day, but a sign of things to come as we're looking and as we're tracking things here with that cold air coming on in. So let me go ahead and continue to give you the latest. We just got another update on this warning now. Weather Service getting even more concerned about this. Granted, it looks like, to me, the space cover to that hail core may have shrunk a little, but it also may have intensified here as we're looking and as we're tracking things. So we have to be very mindful here of that. They're now going up to 1.85 inches in diameter here. Well, I'm sorry, algorithm is, and they're going up to 1.75 and 70 mile an hour winds. So Gulf Coast sides on 70 mile an hour wind. That's about the highest they've been, you know, combined today on this with this, you know, weather concern. Pelham, but Roy, it's going to be south of there probably. During the warning, you have Gulf says hail 70 mile an hour gusts. People and animals outside could be injured. Expect hail damage to roofs, siding, and windows. Vehicles there. Tree damage could be considerable. Wind damage is also likely to mobile homes, roofs, and outbuildings. So, pretty rural area here right now, but going to pass between Meigs and Ocklackney here on this Sunday afternoon. People traveling, and it's going to cross State Road 3, Georgia 3, and US 19 here. And just a little bit, some hail that could, at this point, go into considerable like that. It could be enough to cause some damage to some vehicles here and the like. So you got to be very mindful of that here as we're looking, as we're tracking things. I'm just trying to find some things out here. Trying to give you guys the very latest here on all of this. So when I say considerable, you guys might be wondering what I'm talking about here. Well, let me go ahead and pull this on up. Just bear with me here just a second. Just trying to go through this here. I have a graphic in here. I haven't used this one in a while, but let me throw it up here. You know, considerable means maximum of 70 to 79 and hail of 1.75 inches or greater. So this now, you know, both levels of this are beating that tag. If it was a destructive one, we'd actually get an alert like a tornado warning on your phone if the winds were 80 there, or a hail over 2.75 inches in diameter. So again, that's kind of your storyline with all this. With severe weather, you just have to be very cognizant here. You know, this is a considerable damage tag that we have on this. Space is what most of these get. It's a little bit, you know, up from your normal severe thunderstorm warning now. You know, not including Decatur anymore. That's been canceled out with the geography. details here as this progresses. But Grady, Mitchell, Thomas counties, until 4 o'clock, we have now a considerable damage tag here. That's the level here of this warning here, the threat level. Not the space with the warning, not just barely meeting the criteria for a warning, but exceeding it by a good little bit based on what we're seeing, based on the history of this storm. You have to be very mindful of that here for sure. So, very important to keep in mind, obviously, as we're looking at or tracking things here. Again, I'll throw that up there one more time. There you go. Just to kind of telling that story, though, for sure. Just to give you guys the very latest here. And I'm just trying to go through some of this information here in the Weather Center. Trying to keep you informed, live with you. Again, let me go ahead and see what we have here. Trying to give you the very latest details. Large oak trees, power lines down. They're in the, I believe it's the Veda, or maybe, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, but 2 miles southwest of Mount Pleasant, in Decatur County. Law enforcement reports that around 310, there, the 3500 block of Veda Road there were large oak trees down, power lines down, and some roof damage even. So, this is again overachieving here a little bit. Not what we want to see, obviously, in this type of scenario, as we give you guys the latest information here. As we give you guys the very latest. And now, not like a hurricane or anything like that, for 99% of us, but it's still pretty impactful weather here for a few folks. I know, a little off topic, but we are coming up on that 40th anniversary of Hurricane Kate here, as we look at the worst tropical cyclones by county here, going back since 1950. That's this is not tropical cyclone driven now, but just wanted to see that because that Kate anniversary coming up, and let's talk about different weather hazards here in the meteorology world as we're on for a while. But as we go ahead and continue to give you guys the very latest on things, continue to track things here. I know, let me check the velocity on this here again. Well, that wind mode doesn't look as impressive. Let me see if our angle needs to switch though. Well, let me switch it anyway. Up a Moody. I mean, that looks nasty with the hail core though, from that mode. Again, just trying to give you guys the very latest here. As you're staying with me. Some of these parameters don't look as strong, but then you see that 3 coming up. That's not what you want to see. Or a run radar mode now saying hail could be as big as 3 inches in diameter here. I don't think it's that big, but still, could be pretty big here. 1.75 inches, the warning is 4. As we're looking here and as you're tracking it here. Other modes saying 1.46. It generally is a more reasonable mode here. Let me go ahead. You can see our little history with this. You had the wind gust 6570, 6970 around the airport. You had your damage over here reported there. That's the where the large oak trees were down, power lines were down, some roof damage there in Decatur County, the Mount Pleasant area. Then you have north of Cairo there now, where our algorithm is picking up on this. It's just in that environment here. That's causing it to be very nasty, malignant storm here. Unfortunately, as we look at things here this afternoon. Just got to be really, careful here with the overall storyline as we keep you guys safe and informed here and keep you guys up to date on this. Watching the situation as it progresses. We'll probably get a new warning here pretty soon on this. We have Grady, Mitchell, and Thomas till 4. We'll probably get an extension of this warning here shortly. I know we have some advisories for some of this to the south here along this line. Just to 36 at Quincy there. I think that's from the outflow boundary. Sometimes when you get those, that can, either spark up more stuff and or can also be a sign of some weakening though too, but we'll see. That's further to the south though, more that environment down there. But as we give you the latest, I know, just very quickly, and we don't have a tornado warning. If it did, I wouldn't. I mean, just, I wouldn't really feel comfortable doing this, but I have this updated. I'll throw this up really quick on the screen here. Let me go ahead and just switch something off here real quick, just as we've been on for a while. Just thought since I have this up to date, looking at some college football stuff, I know weekly update on this. We normally wait till later on to sew in this before the actual rankings come out Tuesday night. I have Georgia Tech up there now. Our Georgia viewers, probably like to see that to some degree. They didn't play. Other teams having trouble in the ACC there. And that, ACC race, and just what I'm predicting right now. And then Georgia, they're down a little because of the way Texas Tech played. But just a real quick sneak peek of that here, as I wanted to just show you that here, since, something kind of get out ahead of the official rankings, since I do have that updated here in the system. I updated after the games for myself versus waiting. So that way there's not, before even the AP, I guess they had to come out this afternoon. But, I think they had James Madison ahead of USF there, but I put in at the last slot. But just so we're not, there's not confirmation bias per se. Anyway, that's something we normally say Tuesday nights. We said it Thursday this past week because of the, update not, happening there last Tuesday because we're off. But just thought I'd throw that up there real quick. This is a nasty storm though. Back to the storm we go. It's a weird signature. This is, before you had actual velocity, correlation coefficient especially, you can just tell looking at radar. It's nasty when you have these echoes like this. This is something that's more concerning is, darker, blacks here per se. It's even some lights showing up in here a little. That's indicative of very, very heavy rain in some cases, but in this case, not so maybe bigger raindrops in some cases, but here it's hailstones. Seeing that as rain. But in this case, it's obviously something more, significant than that. It's hail, and it's just making it look, heavier and heavier on the Doppler, on the reflectivity, base reflectivity. Okay, new warning now to 4:30, 70-mile-an-hour winds, 1.75 inch hail possible with this storm. Grady, Mitchell, Thomas, and Brooks and Colquitt there. So northeastern Grady, southeastern Mitchell, northern Thomas, northwestern Brooks, southern Colquitt here till 4:30. At 3:43, a severe thunderstorm was located near Ocklackney, or 8 miles southeast of Pelham, moving east at about 35 miles an hour. So Goffball says, hey, on 70-mile-an-hour gust, so people and animals outdoors could be hurt. The expect hail damage to roof, side, and vehicles, windows. Tree damage could be considerable. Wind damage is also likely on mobile homes, roofs and outbuildings. Moultrie, Ocklackney, Coolidge, Berlin, Acreage, there, Pineborough, Autryville, Center Hill, Spence Airport, South Moultrie, Chastain, Spence, Moultrie Municipal Airport, Quality, and Murphy all under this warning until 4:30 this afternoon. The worst though about to cross between Meigs and Ocklackney. Then you see somewhere in there, there's the Moultrie Airport right up here. There's Coolidge, probably closer to Coolidge there, especially based on that latest scan, the way it's progressing more east, and then you can kind of just progress it out a little. I'm gonna zoom out a little bit. I mean, as of now, things are pretty, easy to predict here on this path. I mean, eventually it's going to cross that 75, and that could cause issues to vehicles along there, maybe about an hour, give or take, as we're looking and as we're tracking that there. So, you can see this progressing now as I progress it across. You see maybe Lanier County, Homerville, then into Ware County here this afternoon. All the way maybe to Brantley and Glen. That could be a 4-hour track here, all the way across if it were to hold together. So this is, something that we're having to keep our eyes on here. I know if it goes a little more easterly, it could do this more like this though, and then still, may end up getting up there a little, but let's just progress it. It's a little of even to Camden County some. That's several hours away there. So again, a little bit of a hook on here now. That's not what we want to see, but I don't see much rotation. A little bit maybe, but not a lot in there. Let me take the other angle one here. Is that the closer radar now? Let me see. Oh no, it's still Tallahassee. We'll watch that though, that little notching going on here. The tornado threat's pretty low today, not zero, but it is pretty low. As we track things here. As we continue to give you guys the latest here on all of this. So, there's your hail tracker. Moultrie, airport there to Coolidge, give or take. You see some of these different areas. It's been going pretty easterly here, so then you have like Berlin, Hahira, give or take, Adel, somewhere in that corridor probably. Lakeland, Homerville, they're in Georgia. So you kind of get the idea of where this, if this holds together like that, it could head. So be ready. It could be a while, but be ready here with this. So, again, we're continuing to give you guys the latest on the situation. We're trying to give you guys the updates here, give you guys a heads up. They're the latest scan, a little bit less of a hook on there, which is good. But you still see, some big, signatures of rain, which it's not rain here, though. In this case, it's hail potential. It's the higher reflectivity values, the, more ominous colors here on the screen. So, again, we're just trying to give you guys the latest on what's going on here. We're going to keep watching things. We're going to keep tracking them. We're going to keep the stream going. But I'm going to catch my breath for a few minutes since the track is pretty, it's not shifting around too much. I mean, it's been pretty set in stone. We've been giving the heads up here. Pretty, out ahead for these areas here. So it's not tornado, type situation. It's, sometimes more population, sometimes more rural. But we're going to keep watching things. I'm going to catch my breath. We'll be back at 4 o'clock with another update. Here in about 11, 12 minutes, I'm going to run a loop here of things. I'll turn the mic off for now, but we're going to gather more information, and we'll be back here at the top of the hour with more updates. So again, you see how warm it is, but that's going to change, and you see the warnings start popping up. We had the one in the Panhandle. Some of that stuff had weakened further back, but up north here, that's where that corridor of the more ideal conditions for this, unfortunate weather scenario is coming together. Okay, well, we just got another warning. Okay, let's wait here. Let's stay here. We just got another warning. Okay, that's a whole different, area of the line now. They're going with a warning on. So we need to tell you about this first. Okay. At 348, severe thunderstorms located along a line extending from near Cairo to 12 miles southeast of Wiggum to near Havana, moving east at 45 miles an hour. This new warning now includes northeastern Gadsden, northeastern Jefferson, northeastern Leon, northwestern Madison, southern Grady County, west central Lowndes County, Thomas County, Brooks County, all to 445. So this is a base warning, 60-mile-an-hour winds, quarter-size hail. So coming, right there into Cairo, then Thomasville, then Quitman, maybe eventually the Valdosta area. It's not as well formed as the area to the north, but it still could mean business based on the history we had with some of the other storms, earlier on here in the overall pattern. So it's a little more broad. It's not quite as focused. So not, maybe a little bit bigger area, but not quite as intense, not quite as volatile as the area with the warning up north for portions of, Brooks and Colquitt and Grady, counties there, Mitchell, Thomas, like until 4:30. But again, we're just continuing to give you the latest here on this situation as we're live with you guys. So that's that new warning now. So we're having to stick with this here a little bit, trying to give you the latest updates on the situation here. see what we can find in terms of some traffic cams around Cairo, maybe. There's different pronunciations of Cairo depending on where you are. Egypt there, is a Cairo, and then it's Cairo in Illinois. But this is Cairo there, where we're watching and we're tracking this here this afternoon. So again, giving you the update today, we're 81 here east of Stark in North Central Florida. Not getting any storms here right now, but watching storms like around Cairo there. Grady County. Trying to pull up a camera if we can. Just a one-man band here, but let me go ahead and pull you, in a camera, State Road 188 at State Road 38 spur there in Grady County. I'm going to see this here live. This is your Georgia 5-1 perspective. Your GDOT camera, Georgia Department of Transportation. You see quite a bit of traffic out there here this Sunday afternoon. It's wet roads, if nothing else. That's an issue sometimes too. If even before severe weather, you can have the oils on the roads. It makes things kind of slick out there. And then with the rain mixing, and then that can cause vehicles to lose control here. So we got to be very mindful of that as we're looking at things, as we're tracking things here in toward the weather center. Again, we're just continuing to give you guys the very latest. It is 3:52 Eastern Standard Time. Sunset's in a couple hours here this afternoon. Right now it's pretty dark though in some area, like in Grady County in Georgia. So again, this tells that story here right now with these weather conditions being a little bit nasty. Maybe some lightning. Hopefully no power flashes in there, but can't really tell from this angle what it is. But you saw some flash in there, it looked like anyway. In the distance, possibly. I don't know if it's on this, but at night sometimes like red lights can do, weird things to the camera. I don't know if that's what was going on here. I don't think it's dark enough for that, but still, again, we're watching now multiple, areas of concern here. We're gonna try to take a break with this, but we have this area down here. You see around Reno community there. Or maybe pronounced Reno. I'm not 100% sure there, but you see south of Cairo there, west of Metcalf, northwest of Miccosukee there, as we're giving you guys the very latest. So again, we're just gonna continue to watch this. Now, depending on where this storm gets, it's possible if it gets kind of let's check the speed. If it can, if stuff kind of forms below this, it could kind of cut off a little bit of this storm here to the north, possibly, and weaken it some. It looks a little weaker, but earlier it didn't look as strong. We had a gust to 70 at the airport at Bainbridge, so you just never know here. This moves toward Coolidge there, and then you have toward Thomasville there. Again, the worst of this might be on the south side of town there, around Thomasville. Let me look at the direction on this directly, though. As we're watching this here, up toward the equipment area. We've got Asta later on. We'll see. Let me look this around. You'll be able to see kind of the progression of the organization. These more recent scans kind of show that. This might go more south side of Thomasville. The worst of this, though, once you kind of move past some of these radar angles, sometimes makes things a little easier to see. So, Thomasville, even in town, may get into some of this. You're under the warning, so you gotta respect that polygon, obviously, but, might end up doing something kind of like this, and then like this there. So Thomasville, Metcalf, equipment. It says it's more broad than they storm to the north, so it's a little bit bigger path, maybe a little bit lesser damage potential as we're looking here, as we're tracking. Okay, we just got an update on the warning there for areas there of Grady, Mitchell, Brooks, and Colquitt, and Thomas. So Grady and Mitchell have been canceled, but Brooks and Colquitt and Thomas continue at 4:30. Considerable damage, 70-mile-an-hour winds, possible hail to an inch. So they have dropped the hail number a little on that from golf ball size to quarter size. That's a little bit of weakening, but the wind number's still up there, especially what happened earlier on. They're not, wanting to, they want to err on the side of caution and not going to take any chances, especially based on the reports. They had more of that than the hail reports. Using the meteorology that's actually been verified to try to, warn further down the road for some of these different communities. So, severe thunderstorm warning remains in effect until 4:30 Eastern Standard Time for northeastern Thomas, northwestern Brooks, and southern Colquitt counties. At 3:55, a severe thunderstorm was located near Coolidge, 12 miles southeast of Pelham, moving east at 35 miles an hour. 70-mile-an-hour wind gusts, quarter-size hail possible. Moultrie, Coolidge, Berlin, Pineborough, Moultrie Municipal Airport, Otteryville, Spence Airport, Murphy, South Moultrie, and Chastain here under this. So, again, just trying to give you guys the very latest here. You can see some of this wind here. This is northern Thomas County, and then Thomasville is the worst, maybe kind of going to the north, and, the south storm may kind of come through, but the north storm is where it's going to be, even worse here as we're looking at things and as you're tracking things here this afternoon. So, eventually, Light 75 is going to have issues. If we get more pop-up stuff, though, that can kind of, it might, get more people with the rain. And, we want more people to have rain. You don't want the lighting. I don't have the lighting tracker on here. Get really busy, points on here. But, when we want more rain, you want more heavy downpours, but it might limit the severe potential some. That'd be a positive. We really need the rain, as I've reiterated here quite a bit with that drought monitor. I mean, very concerned about the drought there, obviously. As we've talked about there, the extreme conditions, they're not quite exceptional, but, we need the precip. So, see how much rain we've got in the last hour in some of these spots. We don't want flooding like Central Florida had recently, a couple weeks ago or so, but interesting. So in a few of these spots, these yellows here northwest of Quincy, a little over an inch there in the last hour. Storm total, similar story, maybe inch and a quarter in a few spots, which anything helps here if we don't get it severe. Yep, boundary coming from this, by the way, which can sometimes, again, rock off more stuff, but it can also indicate some of that stuff weakens a little. We had some of the Florida stuff, further to the south, weakens some further out in the panhandle. But yeah, if you see the 70, if you're just like joining for over watching football and you're popping in, we had a gust of 70 there at Bainbridge there this afternoon. So that's why we're a little more concerned. And a lot of us still won't even get the storms, but we actually had, verified gust of 70, but we're going to have much cooler air coming behind all this. Tonight in the 40s around like Stark, where we're at in North Central Florida. Tomorrow night, much colder than that. Some 20s on the board. A freeze here is expected. Wind chill values maybe in the core 20s. Some spots in Georgia, maybe the upper teens even with the wind chill values. So a huge difference from what we're seeing with the temperatures right now. I mean, that can't be reiterated enough because the cold, whether you get a freeze frost or just, cold wind and the like, it's going to impact everybody here in our 62 counties. You see 83, 84 Tallahassee, 79 Thomasville. Instead of those type of numbers tomorrow, it's going to be much chillier during the day. I mean, you're talking like in the 50s, give or take, for some of these daytime highs coming up. And in the night, you're talking about 20s in some backyard. I mean, you're talking about maybe a 55-degree temperature change here over about, I know, folks using that over the decades, but 55-degree temperature change going from like the, mid-80s here at points to the upper 20s over just about 36 hours. And that, is a big deal, obviously. It's a big deal here with that temperature change, and that gets folks off guard. So we need to be very mindful of going from near record highs to maybe actually hitting record lows here for today, November 11th here on the calendar. So that's a big deal here. The cold's going to affect everybody. That needs to be reiterated. We don't generally have, we can get freezes. We have them every year for most of us here, in our area. I mean, sometimes the beaches, they might just barely get them. We're not necessarily going to have it right at the East Coast beaches here in some, cases this time around. But the point is to go from, like summer to winter that quickly doesn't happen around here that much. That's why, and we even updated our thing on our website there. early Friday, the Storm Prediction Center put this risk out. They were seeing some stuff. The models weren't really picking up on it at first, but sometimes they get just a strong, powerful system, even if stuff doesn't look like it's going to form. Well, that contrast, we're just getting the air masses to, have that contrast. Some other things in the atmosphere going on. Barometric pressure under 1,012 millibars are used to stock, and then you get some of these storms to form. We haven't had much lately. We need the rain. We really do need the precip. We just don't want the severe weather, and that's why you got to be watchful here. Even if it doesn't maybe seem like we'd have, a bunch of rain even on the map here, storms. Sometimes you just got to be a little bit, got to be watchful. These situations based on the models here, even if they're not showing it, the contrast in the air masses can be that huge trigger here for this meteorological pattern. So got 2 warnings, 1 to 4:30 for portions of Brooks, Colquitt, and Thomas. Severe thunderstorm warning there, 70-mile-an-hour wind gust, quarter-size hail possible. And then Gaston, Jefferson, Leon, Madison, at least portions of those areas, not Tallahassee downtown, but Gaston, Jefferson, Leon, Madison, Grady, Lowndes, Thomas, Brooks counties, portions of those zones under a severe thunderstorm warning till 4:45. 60-mile-an-hour wind gust and quarter-size hail possibilities in, that bigger geographic area there within that polygon. So, okay, so unless something changes on us, what we're going to try to do, we're going to catch our breath here, and we'll come back at about 4:30 unless we need to pop back in sooner. But giving a heads up, this accent is not, just racing down. It's not moving that slow here either, but, it's been on, somewhat of a predictable path here this afternoon for storms. So we've been giving you the heads up. We've been giving you the alert here. Just please stay weather aware. And if we got a tornado warning for anybody in our area, we'll pop back in this stream immediately. I'm going to keep the stream going, and we'll be back on at 4:30, the bottom of the hour, unless we get something really pertinent. I know we get some thunderstorm warning updates between now and then, but, unless it's something really pertinent, we'll just kind of have that radar running. But if we get a tornado warning, that's very pertinent, obviously, and we'll jump in at it as soon as we can, to give you the very latest on that. That's, our policy has been on for every tornado warning storm to move through our area the last 6 years or so. So we got to be very much on top of that. And we haven't had many tornado warnings, much severe weather, even as we're seeing right here today with the warnings, thunderstorm warnings, in a while. So again, that's the storyline right now. We're going to leave the other radar mode loop, and I'm just letting that render out, make sure we have that so it doesn't like start skipping frames too much on us. That big temperature contrast, the storyline, those, again, winds. We had a gust of 70 at Bainbridge there, almost a hurricane force. Still got to be remaining alert here. And I'm going to go ahead and catch my breath here for now, though. Again, not a tornado situation, so we've been giving you a heads up for a while. We're going to be back with more at 4:30 unless we need to pop back in sooner. So we're going to keep this running, and we'll be back here at the bottom of the hour. Again, we're running this loop here for you. Watch the progression of things. I'm going to move this over just a little bit so we can kind of watch things here just to, and I need to just kind of, let me see how I want to frame this, because sometimes it's a little bit of a thing here when we're framing this. We want to make sure we get, the areas, that are most under a threat covered here better, and that it makes sense on this loop here. So here we go. I think that looks pretty good there in terms of this. So we're going to keep on watching and keep on tracking here. We'll turn the mic off for now. We'll be back here at 4:30 unless I need to pop back in sooner. Stay safe. jumping back a little bit earlier here because we have this number on Thomasville that's looking really strong here, southeast sides of town right now here at 4:15 on your Sunday afternoon. We need to make sure folks are inside and away from windows. I've been giving you the heads up, but this is definitely taking that little bit of a northerly jog here as we're looking at things and as we're tracking them. As you kind of see that progressing here in the most recent scan. So right there right now, around State Road 38B. You can see Old Monticello Road. This is a very nasty storm here, and we've been getting some hail indications, some wind indications in here as we're tracking things. So you really need to be very mindful here of what we're doing with around Thomasville and Thomas County. Again, this is a nasty severe thunderstorm situation here right now. The warning, the latest on that, they're continuing that here in this area. They broaden the view out. Make sure I click on the right polygon here. We're talking about 60-mile-an-hour winds and quarter-size hail, though it's possible it could be even a little bit stronger than that there in toward that area based on that, really nasty signature on the Doppler technology right now. The south and east sides of Thomasville is where we're at with this as we give you guys the very latest. So let me see if I can pull up some traffic cameras in that area here. Let me see what we can kind of pull up. We'll pull up there, State Road 3 at Remington Avenue. So let me go ahead and pull that one up here right now. We're going to jump over to this. You can kind of see the volatile conditions here. A lot of folks out and about, unfortunately, and you can see that it is rough looking out there around Thomasville and Thomas County right now. Again, this was a GDOT camera, Georgia 511 camera, State Road 3 at Remington Avenue. So, again, that's kind of the storyline there right now. Even if you don't have the strongest winds on one of these cameras, or the biggest hail in one spot, it still, can be very, nasty just having to drive in rain if you haven't done it for a while. So, have to be aware of that here as we're looking and as we're tracking things there around Thomasville. So, again, just trying to give you guys the very latest here on this situation. Let me pull up some more cameras here. We'll go just a little bit further up to the north there, it looks like. Some of the worst hadn't come into some of these areas further north. Yeah, and, the angle on this, if it's kind of going more toward the airport or something, then maybe it wouldn't, But let's go ahead and pull this up. That's one camera there. Just real quick, it wasn't showing a whole bunch, so switching away from that. And then let me broaden this out. That's where the airport is. And let me go ahead and switch over here. Just watching the situation here. Don't have any of the speeds on there yet. It almost looks like it's kind of splitting the difference here a little. So, but there's the airport. You can kind of see it. The runway there, viewpoint from above. And you have the storm has kind of made that northern jog, but it may be kind of splitting the difference between some of those cameras and, like if they're up here and then there, and instead of coming, it's coming in here, but then it's kind of going south a little bit still, of that as we're looking and as we're tracking things. So that's kind of storyline right now. You can see some of the wind enhancement here. As we're looking, there's, quite a bit of population down there, not quite as much as, right into town as we're looking here, but definitely watching the situation here on the different scans, as that's been moving on in, I back it up and go forward. So we're going to continue to watch this. We're going to continue to give you the latest updates. There was a gust of 44 at 4:10 in Thomasville, 4:10 p.m. So we're going to keep tracking all this here for you. We're going to be back here in about 10 minutes with another update. So keep it tuned to Cloud Weather. We'll keep you guys up to date here on this storm activity here. As the situation does progress, we're monitoring it here for you. We're giving you guys the latest updates to protect you, your friends, and your family against some nasty weather. You see some nasty signatures near around, maybe just on the southern fringe of the Moultrie Airport as well. So got to be aware of that too, not right in the Moultrie itself there. But it's a pretty nasty accent here. You see Valdosta could be in the path of some of this as we look ahead. And we'll just have to see, if some of it coalesces more, can weaken the max potential. But we'll just have to kind of watch and see how that goes here. Sunsets for about, or not for another hour and 15 minutes, give or take. So, still have a little bit more of that instability here in play for now, and we're gonna keep watching and keep tracking. We'll be back with more, unless we need to pop back in with something like a tornado warning, which would be more pertinent. I know we're seeing that, signature right now, but if something like that happens and it's a more pertinent situation, we'll pop back in soon, or otherwise, we're back here in about 10 minutes. Stay tuned and stay safe. Stay indoors as well. Breaking back in here at the bottom of the hour. It's 4:30. I'm meteorologist Casey Cloud here in the Weather Center, tracking a new severe thunderstorm warning that has been issued here until 6 o'clock for portions of Jefferson, Madison, Berrien, Brooks, Colquitt, Cook, Lanier, Lowndes, and Thomas counties. So, again, we need to be mindful of that here, and there were some of our different communities. That does include Valdosta there now. As we're looking, I know there was a photo of large hail from north of Cairo there in Gritty County coming out about 3:43 this afternoon. So that was, something there. That was pretty noteworthy. A half dollar size, an inch and a quarter in diameter. So we're going to switch modes here though right now, and as we continue here to watch and continue to track things, I know we just want to kind of get on in here. You see some of these winds here showing up off the Moody radar, going over toward areas like Barney and Morgan and Ehira and Barrett and be missed there and Lakeland. You kind of get the idea as we're watching and as we're tracking things. You see Quitman there and the community of Dixie there as well. So different pockets of wind energy showing up here. And we're trying to give you guys the very latest on what's happening here in towards south central Georgia. So again, Berlin to Morven, you see, Barney, Ehira. Again, some pretty nasty winds coming on into the picture. These brighter colors indicating some stronger winds here as we're looking right around State Road 122. This is in northern parts of Brooks County there as we give you the latest updates here. We'll give you guys the latest updates. Again, we're going to go ahead and keep tracking things here. Keep monitoring them. I'm just trying to give you guys the very latest on what's going on here. We're just trying to stay on top of everything. I know it's been kind of for some of us here across the area watching a Doppler, active day here. Others of us maybe watching football. Unfortunately, I know folks watching the NFL. It did not go well for Jacksonville out in Houston. Demoralizing loss for the Jaguars, and then Tampa losing at home to New England today as well. So, and then yesterday's college games, FSU and Florida didn't go too well either. So, as we go ahead and keep on looking here at the maps, we see here, you can see some of this wind energy moving toward Ehira there. That could be up to 60 miles an hour here as we're looking and as we're tracking. Some damage could occur there. We're talking about all these different polygons. You have quarter-size hail possibility in here. Some of these different zones. So we have to be very mindful of all this. We do not have a mesoscale discussing from the Storm Prediction Center in Norman, Oklahoma, saying there's only a 20% chance they would actually get a watch issued here for that blue circled area in toward the region. You see isolated severe gust is what they're saying. The possibility is, and some hail risk that'll remain possible late this afternoon into the early evening hours ahead of a loosely organized band of storms there, near the Florida-Georgia border. So as of 4:25 here, regional radar analysis showed a loosely, according to, and I'm just kind of reading this verbatim from the Storm Prediction Center, but they're saying regional radar analysis showed a loosely organized cluster of thunderstorms ongoing along a diffuse frontal zone from southwestern Georgia into the Florida Panhandle. Over the last hour, these storms have gradually intensified with reports of wind damage and measured gusts, and driven primarily by surface heating of a partially modified air mass around 1,000 joules per kilogram there that's in place, and is sufficient for maintenance of occasional stronger updrafts as storms there continue eastward. Behind the primary frontal wind shift with veered surface flow overlapping stronger flow aloft is largely front parallel. This is supporting elongated 0 to 6 kilometers shear of 50 plus knots for relatively straight photographs as indicated by the area of edge. This should continue to favor a mixed convective mode with a few supercells and linear, type of structures there, and radar trends and convective, available, modeling there. That guidance suggests intermittent organization remains possible here. Convective allowing modeling guidance suggests that intermittent organization remains possible over the next few hours as storms track eastward along the Florida-Georgia border there. Some guidance shows additional upscale growth is likely into the early evening. The highest risk for severe gusts and some hail is expected with any of the more established supercells or Boeing segments able to evolve, but with only modest mid-level lapse rates and continued undercutting by the advancing front. A broader and sustained severe risk requiring a watch appeared unlikely. That's why there's only a 20% chance that a severe thunderstorm watch will get issued. We're talking about much of a tornado threat where, the overall wind pattern, but definitely severe thunderstorm and hail threat is in play here this afternoon, right near and north of the Georgia border here, with Florida. So again, we're just continuing to give you guys the latest. We have 2 warnings on the board here right now. This blue circle there is where we're watching the highest risk for severe thunderstorm activity. So from about McClenny northward there, through our Georgia counties, Live Oak northward, you kind of get the idea, parts of Duval County northward, that delineation. So we're continuing to watch things. We're continuing to track things here. 6 o'clock, Jefferson, Madison, Cook, Berry, Lanier, Lowndes, Thomas, Brooks, and Colquitt counties under a warning. That that's one that goes out a little bit further eastward. We have another warning, portions of Lowndes, Thomas, and Brooks until 4:45. So again, we're watching this become a little bit more broad, and that there's not as much of a focus area of severe, but it's more broad, and there's more areas that could get thrown to marginally severe here as this does approach the I-75 corridor here in the next little bit. You're talking about Hahira, you're talking about Valdosta, next little bit. Quitman right now, they're getting into some of this there, into parts of Brooks County, so you have to be very mindful of all that. You have these different areas here with some of this nasty convection. You just have to be very mindful of the situation here as we're looking at things and as we're tracking them. In fact, let me pull up one of the traffic cameras in the Quitman community there in toward Brooks County. We'll go ahead and pull up a live look from the Georgia 5-1 perspective there. The Georgia, Department of Transportation. So let me go ahead and kind of flip that on. I know it's sunny, by the way, here east to Stark, but that's kind of interesting. But it is, sun will set before we have the, area, the corridor where the storm development will be more likely. But here's a look outside right now there in Georgia. You see some slick roads there in toward Brooks County, telling that weather story. Gotta be careful on the roads where the oil's next, and we do need the rain now because we've had that drought concern. We're about to have, windy weather and colder weather, which, can kill the grass, and the like here, plants, and, we do need this precip. So if you can get the precip without the severe weather, that would be welcome. Some of these areas are overachieving a little, but the severe threat's also overachieved during the day, especially around Bainbridge, where we had gusts to 70 miles an hour reported on anemometers, which is concerning. That has been damaging in some cases there in toward Decatur County, Georgia. So again, kind of giving you guys the idea of what's going on here in toward the meteorology picture and toward the meteorological storyline. So again, we're just trying to keep you guys informed here on what's going on. And we have some blue skies still showing here. It's honestly really sunny. I'm going to pull a camera up real quick, but I'm not going to keep it up long. It's just so sunny the way the angle is. It's going to be kind of hard to see too much here. So I'll just kind of give you a real quick glimpse outside where we're at here in central Florida, east to Stark. You can see just the brightness there to the sky. Not the case on some of these other traffic cameras, as we've been alluding to and as I've been showing you here in toward like south central Georgia. So that's a contrast here, across our 62 counties. There can be different, weather conditions by a pretty big, margin here, pretty wide, margin. As you're seeing, 50 mile-an-hour gusts are possible right around State Road 33 there in Brooks County, north of Quitman. As we're looking there, you can see some of that wind. It's going to be crossing I-75 here pretty soon. As we're looking closer to Valdosta, and you see some of this there. Going to be crossing around Cecil, Hahira there. As well, this could be damaging wind that we're talking about. I know the Jack's office is an advisory here further out toward the Statenville area and Echoes County. A lot of this becoming a little more messy, which I hope can limit the severe threat. Right now, it's just broadening it out. Not quite as, like considerable type damage threats, just more base, threats here, but still enough to be, causing concern. That's overall wider and in some cases more populated geographic areas. So that's the cause for concern there, and we're looking